Hello, everybody. My name is Anna MacDonald. I'm the manager of the Goodwill Workforce Connection Center in Lombard. We are a free service to the community. We're in the Goodwill store. We help with writing resumes, job leads, mock interviews. We have hiring events too. Actually, next Tuesday on the 18th, we have Advocate, Angel's Grace, a informational table about the Climate Equity Job Act training opportunities. So you can come and talk to resources in the community and employers. So we get you registered, you have access to our events. My contact information is here. I'll put it in the chat at the end of the presentation. But today we're going to talk about applying for jobs online in the applicant tracking system. Feel free to interrupt me, ask a question, to put a comment or a question in the chat, and Matt could kind of monitor that and let me know if somebody has a question. You'll have to forgive me. I have a cold, kind of still dealing with that, so it might sound a little nasal, or stop frequently to drink some water like I'm going to do right now. So let's talk about applicant tracking systems. Which is referred to as the ATS. We're going to talk about what is the ATS, do's and don'ts, how to register on the applicant tracking system, what it looks like for the future. I always like starting conversations and workshops about what are the new skills in this 21st century. What are the skills that employers are looking for? So really, it comes down to these 6 soft skills: adaptability, a willingness to learn, emotional intelligence, communication, problem solving, creativity, which are really a lot of words, buzzwords that we're going to talk about, that you will see on a job description.
Hey
Because,
Anna, I'm
yes.
so sorry to interrupt. Are you able to share your slides full screen?
Oh, yeah, I
I'm
could
having a little
try.
trouble reaching
Sometimes,
it.
how's that?
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah, okay. Let me see if I can move up and down. Yay, hallelujah. We were last 5 other Zoom presentations I had, we were having issues with the slide presentation. But you must have an updated um Zoom application or something, whatever. But I'm glad you can see it better. So back to my presentation. The 6 soft skill words that these skills employers need more than ever. And this is adaptability, right? Things change so fast. AI is moving fast. The world is moving fast. Time is moving fast. Things change, and they need individuals to get on board and adapt to that change. Now, change is scary. We understand that. And hopefully, a good employer will manage the change correctly by getting buy-in, explaining why the change is needed, but you have to be able to adapt. And adaptability is very hard for people. There's a lot of fear and anger involved. And if you're unchecked and you don't have emotional intelligence or self-awareness, you might not understand that how you're reacting to this is because of fear. So you have to move fast. And that comes with the willingness to learn, because you are going to be learning something new, and you have to want to learn it. You have to be curious. You have to want to learn on your own. You have to look for books to read, free classes to take. Libraries have classes. A lot of employers now have like their own internal universities. Um, you have to want to change. And, I've been talking about this the last year and realizing I need to learn. So I was able to join Coursera, and I'm taking a data analytics course now. that I think will help me in my career. So you have to want to learn. You can't coast anymore in jobs. It's not like it was in the 70s. And I know people want to go back to paper applications. It's just not going to happen. So you have to adapt or you get left behind. And that's just, the harsh realities of it. Um, Emotional intelligence, it's developing your EI um, to be able to handle situations, um, to be able to understand your emotions and what's triggering you, to have self-confidence and self-esteem, the self-awareness. That's all emotional intelligence. Communication, right? You have to be a good communicator. You have to be able to get your point across and influence individuals and meet them where they are. And there's all kinds of skills involved in communication, which we're going to talk about later. Problem solving, right? We got a lot of problems we got to solve, and they're not big, you know, problems to solve that directors and vice presidents are doing, just, entry level kind of problems to solve. And so you have to be able to do that. Creativity, we have these problems to solve that need a new take. You have to be creative about it. So these are some of the words that you are going to see, or words that mean the same thing on job descriptions. So employers, there's another skill that's needed if you're looking for remote employee or a remote position: greater skills, organizational skills, greater communication skills, being proactive, tech savvy, right? The IT person isn't down the hall. You have to be comfortable figuring out some of these technical issues. And I help a lot of people that they're just not comfortable with a computer. They don't know anything about applications or Microsoft, but yet they want to work from home. So, you really have to have some technology experience or comfort level, and motivation. Like what motivates you to do your work and not be distracted by everything else going on in the house. So these are some other skills that are needed, particularly for a remote kind of position. So, what is the applicant tracking system? So, the applicant tracking system is simply a software platform used to just track and filter job applicants, right? So, it has many functions too. So, it allows for the employer to put in a position, the job description, into the system, to then screen the individuals to see if they qualify, if you could communicate with the applicant to say, great, we got your application, or you're moving forward, or we want to ask you to schedule a phone interview. So maybe it'll send you a link to choose a date. If you're not a good fit, then it closes you out. If you are a good fit, it moves you forward. And if you're hired, it pushes you into a different portion of this platform to then be an employee and get your W-2s, your checks, and blah 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 blah. So it does a lot. So when we're talking about an applicant tracking system, we're talking about the software that's used to promote positions, schedule appointments, vet who is a good fit, and then move them forward in the process. So it's kind of a little background on it. So, and what it does is it manages the candidates, right? And it filters out candidates that meet the job or don't meet the qualifications. So what are the 4 basic steps in how applicant system works? So the rec is entered into the applicant tracking system. That's the actual application, or I'm sorry, the job description is loaded into the applicant tracking systems. It gives it a number. This is where the algorithms and the magic happens to kind of determine what are these skills that are a good fit for this position? What are these skills that make somebody successful in the job? How many years of education? What are these particular skills? Um, if there's any degrees, titles, it's all done in this step. And then the applicant tracking system uses the information to create the profile. And then the applicant then, they submit their resume, they set up their profile, you fill out the application, you parse your resume, it sorts it into the different sections, and then you're given a score, and depending on what the processes are for that HR department, they look at the top 10 high scores or top 20 or maybe the top 50, whatever that is for them. And then they set up the appointments, and they could bring in the hiring manager to, be part of that process as well. So it has a lot of functions. A big part of this is these pattern predictions. And, a lot of people are having a lot of issues with, getting their resume through the ATS. And you have to understand on the back end, behind the camera, what's happening. How come I'm not getting a high score? And they're using in the algorithms these pattern predictions. So a pattern prediction involves using these patterns, whatever they may be. If it's a pattern of a particular degree, a pattern of particular skills, a pattern of titles, or X amount of education or X amount of experience that predicts in the future this person being successful. And this could be done by identifying sequences, analyzing data, or using models to simulate patterns. So I'm talking about this so you kind of understand a little more about writing a better resume, because that's the key. You have to have a good resume to get through all these processes, get this high score to land at the desk of the recruiter. And when they put in the job description, we're hoping that the job description they're using is relevant. Names change in titles. Before you're recruiter, now you're talent acquisition. Before you're just HR, now there's consultants and, data analytics and they call them people share or talent. There's all these different titles. So if you have maybe an outdated title, you need to make sure the title you're using is a current title. And so we're hoping that the job description that they're using is updated. I think one of the situations with this pandemic, obviously it moved time forward, things moved fast. Employers realized new skills were needed to be successful. They had a lot of unknown unknowns. And now we're looking for people with particular different skills. And so we're hoping that the employer is updating these job descriptions to meet these new demands of skills. And it's your job to make sure that your resume meets or is aligned with that job description. So every resume has to match that job in order to be successful, to get through, all of these systems and processes to get the interview. That's the goal, to get the interview. So we're relying on them to give us a good job description, because this is what they're predicting. This is what we need. We need this skill, we need this education for you to be successful in this job. So really read the job description. So what are these buzzwords? The buzzwords, there's all kinds of buzzwords. So buzzwords for resumes and applicant tracking system.
Wonderful. Enjoy. Thank you so much.
Are skills, These skills could be technical skills. They could be, they could be a skill of communication. They could be a skill of interpersonal skill words, organizational kind of words. It could be the skills we're looking for, certifications, degrees. Action verbs are really important in resumes. We're going to talk about that. And then they help your resume stand out to the manager. So the buzzwords, right? Let's, for example, say communication. So you're looking at a job description that says communication. It can mean many, 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 many things, as you can see. Communication is advising, explaining, writing, editing, translating, persuading, selling, presenting, instructing, public speaking, articulating. These are all words that mean communication. So it's your job when you're reading the resume to read into what it is that they mean about communication. In order for you to be successful, what I encourage people to do is to think about their jobs. You need to spend time just thinking and reflecting. Go back, look, and think about a day in the life of the job. This is what I did on Monday. I sent out this email to customers. I have a report I'm working on Excel, and it goes to the finance department. Or, you work in a call center, you take 50 calls an hour or a shift, you answer on the third ring. You really need to think about what you're doing. And then when you're reading the job description, you go back to that list, because the list, essentially, all of the skills that you have fall into communication, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, or organizational skills. So when you're looking at the job description and they're talking about communication, you could say, oh, I explained policies and procedures, or I wrote memos, I translated policies and procedures, I sold cars, I presented to the public and the community, I instructed my team on blah, 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 blah. You're doing all of this and you're not realizing you're doing it, but you've got to give it a label. So does anybody have any questions about this? Okay. So let's look at a job description. I want you to take a few minutes and I want you to tell me, what are some of these buzzwords that you could identify in this job description? Just throw it out. Anybody? Anybody?
If you are more comfortable using the chat, feel free to use it, put it in the
Yeah.
chat, and I can reiterate it to Anna.
I would say consumer concentric focus.
What is it? I'm sorry.
Consumer concentric focus.
What do you think that means?
That means understanding the client or the consumer's um, needs and perspective.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. So what kind of a skill do you think that is?
That skill would be a need for listening skills, um, a valued listener. I'm thinking on top of my head. I apologize.
That's okay. No, that's what you're supposed to be doing,
I
right?
usually get I usually do better when I'm in depth and when I'm doing in-depth thinking.
No problem. You're
Another
doing
would
great.
be communicate effective communication. Um,
Hmm.
Another would be um, consumer awareness, meaning
Yeah,
that you are aware of the consumer background, their concerns.
right.
Um, Attentive listening. So instead
Yeah.
of saying listening, you say attentive listener.
Hmm.
Let me see, a value problem solver.
Yeah, that's
Because
great, Ryan. Thank
you want
you.
to say value problem solver in the aspect that you're it tells you that you're going to listen to the situation of the consumer. You're going to try to solve that problem.
Yeah. And
And
it's funny that you bring up listening, because listening is such an important skill, and there's many steps that happen in the first 10 seconds of listening to somebody. When you're talking to somebody, are you actually present and listening to what they're saying? Are there background noises? Is there a language barrier? Are you biased against this person? Because that happens in that first few seconds of talking to somebody. So, being able to actually, filter out everything and focus on what this person is saying is such a needed skill, right? We're
right.
not listening to each other. We're
Hmm.
distracted. We're distracted by technology, about politics, whatever. So
Hmm.
yeah, thank you for sharing. I'm gonna
And
show you.
I like to add one more thing that I love what
Yes.
you said, that my responses was based on um your statement regarding put yourself in that job position. So when
Mhm.
you said that, I said to myself, well, if I was this person, the customer service, what value would I add to be in that situation if I was doing something every day? So I thank you for reminding us.
Well, thank you, Ryan, for that. So, when you're looking at a job description, what you need to do is filter out the words. I kind of went through this and just filtered out a few things I thought were probably really important to rewriting your resume to reflect the job description. They're talking about customer concerns a lot. I mean, at the very top, you see it 3 times: customer concerns, customer concerns, customer concerns. So, you definitely want a couple of bullet points on your job description, addressing customer concerns. Part of my job was to listen to customer concerns and answer questions, by listening, following up. Another one is articulating or being accurate, record details. That's organizational skills. So, and towards the bottom, I mean, we have Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Office skills. So maybe, one of your function is to, um, you know, uh, monitor customer concerns utilizing Excel spreadsheets to tally, um, the situations and send a report to the director of customer service, something like that. You're addressing these words, you're showing the reader you have the ability to use Microsoft, and you're using Excel, and you're also communicating and sending information to another department. So there's a lot of things that are happening in that one bullet point. But in order to write a really good resume, you have to really dissect the job description. Here again, we're talking a lot of internal skills or interpersonal skills. And they on the job description it says internal, external customers. That's an interpersonal skill. Escalating customer inquiries, that requires interpersonal skills. That's de-escalation, right? You're talking to a customer that is maybe really upset and yelling, and it's your job. You're the owner of the situation. You can't escalate the situation. You don't want to start yelling at the customer, because we know a lot of the times the yelling isn't directed at us, it's the situation. So if you have good emotional intelligence, you're not going to be triggered by this person yelling at you. It doesn't affect confidence or your self-esteem, because this person is yelling at me and they're possibly having a bad day. I could walk away from the situation and not be, frazzled by it. I get it, right? That's that good emotional intelligence. Polite, professional, organizational skill, leadership skills, communication, technical skills, and other skills. As you can see, we're all highlighted in that job description. So there are resources for you out there to kind of help figure out what are these skills. You could go to the Philadelphia Federal Reserve, and they have a really good website there that shows you how to take a previous position in that title and a current position in that title, and it merges them and it tells you what are the top 5, 10 skills that overlap between the two jobs. And then you could, really highlight what those skills are on your resume. You could go to job scan. I think you get a couple of free ones, but it's more of a membership where you can download your resume, you could download the job description, and then it will tell you kind of what you're missing. And then we're going to talk about Open Chat GPT later, but there are resources. Now, these Open Chat, Job Scan, they're not writing the resume for you. It's just a tool to help you write the resume better. And we are hearing a lot of complaints from employers telling us how they could tell that people are using the Open Chat GPT, which is fine. But the issue is you get into the interview and now you can't sell yourself because you really don't know your skills. You don't know, what you put on the resume, what it even means. So, you have to kind of do the work. And it's a lot of work. It's a full-time job to look for a full-time job. So, you're putting a lot of investment and time into it, right? Make sure your resume reflects the position you're applying for. Again, don't try to cheat the system. Use the words that they're using. You could, I'm going to talk about that later. But anyways, really reflect it. Reflect that job. Look for action verbs, transferable skills. Begin each bullet point with a strong action verb. So instead of, you manage something, there's other words to define manage. You directed, you guided, you facilitated, you mentored, you cultivated. Instead of using helped, you coached, you clarified, you facilitated. Instead of using created, you designed, organized. So there's a lot of words out there that could, or give you a good punch, a good beginning to that bullet point. Make sure your resume is error-free. It does go into, a black hole. Make sure words are spelled correctly. Make sure that you have the right email and it's correct. Make sure your phone number is on there. I mean, I've helped people with writing resumes or applicant tracking systems, and their resume doesn't have any contact information. And if you use that resume to parse into the applicant tracking system, and then you don't go back and make sure all the information was put in correctly, you're missing attention to detail, right? So make sure it's error-free. Have somebody look at it. That's what I'm here for. That's what Matt is here for. Don't pay somebody to write a resume. There are free services. They're great. There's WorkNet, the library, and myself. Resume formatting, use bullet points. Don't write in a paragraph form. Don't use graphs, logos, tables, headers, footers. Type simply on that Word doc. As my understanding is the applicant tracking system can't read something that is not on typed directly on the Word doc. So just it's very simple. Type on the Word doc. You could save it as a PDF when you download it for parsing purposes, or even saving it. That's fine. Avoid abbreviations. Spell out what it means, and then add the abbreviation too. Don't use any specialty fonts. Just simple things. It's not a beauty contest. We're more worried about the content of the resume. Don't place dates before the work experience. Begin with the name of the employer first. So the first line is name of the employer, city, state, and then to the right of that row are the dates, month/year. Go to the next row, title, and then your 5 to 7 bullet points. Use the company website to screen for keywords. Go to their value section. What is their mission? Use their words in your resume when you're talking to them. I was helping somebody apply for a job as a caregiver, and they used the word care a lot. And then we listened to the presentation from the CEO, and he was saying, care. We care for our clients. We care for their families. So use their words in your cover letter, in your conversations, on the resume. Accomplishments, toot your horn. It's okay to share what you've accomplished. I mean, that's why they're hiring you, because they're hoping that you have accomplishments where you work, meeting your goals, whatever that might be. So the reason for this is they're trying to get to the question and answer these questions. Are you able to adequately respond to unforeseen situations that occurred during your work? Accomplishments are things that are kind of out of your job description, those added things you take on, the 110% that you give. And these accomplishments mean there was probably a situation that had to be resolved, probably unforeseeable, and you were able to get over that hurdle, break that barrier down. And they're trying to understand your actions. How did they do that? And that's kind of the question they're asking. We're trying to figure out, your actions. Are you going to handle situations the way we want them handled? Are you able to adjust to changing work environments, right? Change, it's important. Can you assist your coworkers with embracing change? Are you willing to take on new tasks? Are you flexible? So these are all kind of what they're looking for, thinking about when they're looking at accomplishments and why you need to provide them. So kind of this is what the job description, or I'm sorry, your resume looks like, right? You start at the very top, your name, city, state, you don't need an address, phone number, your email, and then if you have a LinkedIn URL, that's helpful too. You could put your mission statement. Don't use the word objective or summary. Don't cut and paste a summary from Google. I mean, everyone's using it. You don't stand out. It doesn't make you better than the next candidate. Give a thoughtful statement. I'm passionate about this. It's that elevator speech. It's not easy to write. It isn't. I'll give you that. I mean, mine's forever changing. But, this is a place for you to use their value words. Like, why this position? Why this company? Why this industry? And then you go to your employment experience, professional experience, whatever you want to call it. Then you put in the name of the company, the city, how long you worked there, your title, and then the, up to 7, no more than 10 bullet points. Depending on how much room you have, it should be 2 pages, no more than 2 pages. And then you are showing them you managed timesheets for 65 employees. You got to quantify things, give them the big picture. Don't just say you manage timesheets. How many people? Maybe you're applying for a position where there's only 10 employees, or you're applying for a position where there's 1,000 employees. They want to know, can you handle the volume? And then end it with an accomplishment, whatever that is. Show them, what are you proud of? And then you go back 10, 15 years, and then you add your education. So it's very simple. You don't need any of these bells and whistles. Just simply type this information on a Word doc. It's important to follow instructions when applying for jobs. If they want a cover letter, give them a cover letter. The instructions are there sometimes just to identify, can this person follow instructions? There might be a reason why. So if they're asking for a cover letter, give them a cover letter. If they're asking you to email them first, email them first. Or if they're saying we want you to fill out the application first, fill out the application. Do what they're asking you to do. The EEOC questions, well, in this current political climate, I don't know if they're going to stop doing this or not, but every fall, the EEOC requires employers to give them a report of who's applying for jobs. And that's why these EEOC questions are asked at the end of an application. They ask you, are you a veteran? Do you have a disability? Are you receiving any TANF or SNAP? Some of that too is because companies get a tax credit for hiring veterans. They get a tax credit for hiring somebody that was unemployed and getting unemployment checks. So they're asking these questions. They don't know the answers. The companies don't know the answers to, the hiring manager, the recruiter. I mean, that's all kept confidential. And that is part of this applicant system processes. So that's built into that system. I say this because they're asking the question about disability and people think employers know. Don't tell them. Your disabilities are none of the employer's concerns. Don't, talk about disabilities in the job interview. So let's talk about what new interviews and platforms look like in AI. I mentioned the Chat GPT. I'm not going to, demonstrate that. I'm sure all of you have probably investigated that. As I said before, it's a great tool to use. You just you ask, can you please compare my resume to this job description. They'll say, sure, we could do that. Give us your job description. So you give the job description, then you give the resume, and it compares it. And it will say, oh, you're missing, more communication words, or there seems to be a gap with education. So it's a good tool to use. Just don't, don't cut and paste your resume, because the bigger part is a lot of us don't talk like this Chat GPT. And then we get into the interview and we can't sell ourselves. So it's just a tool out there to help you write a better resume.
And I also like to make a comment that if the interview, I think having ChatGPT evens the playing field. And the reason why I say that is because not only as candidates applying, and we have to go to a certain level of communication, but the interviewer is at a high level platform, because they're asking questions that are normally not thought about on a daily basis of your specific job role. So if they're going to play that at that game level, we as candidates must go at that same level as them.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
ChatGPT is good. It's an even playing field, because
right,
if
an
you
even
go into an
playing field.
interview and they already got their game, well, we
Right.
need to step up to meet them at their game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
ChatGPT is helpful, but again, it's a tool, not an
Right.
overall
Right.
thing. It's a tool.
Right. Yeah. And then so other things that are happening out there, like these on-demand, asynchronistic digital interviews, it's all the same thing. It's just a one-way interaction where you're invited to come to this platform, usually HireVue. HireVue is the big one, where you are going to answer predetermined interview questions, recording yourself answering it, and then it's sent to the employer. So, so maybe, down the line somewhere, resumes aren't going to be efficient anymore. They really aren't. I work daily with people that are fighting these applicant tracking systems, and I think employers on the other end don't feel like they're getting good candidates, which they need to own up to it, because like I said, a lot of their job descriptions are obsolete. They're not updating it to attract those right candidates. And then, there's unfortunately biases with AI. That's a whole other discussion. But what I'm saying is you have to be prepared to talk about yourself and know your skills, know what you need to work on, know what, you're good at. And writing the resume is such a great step into learning all of this and really being able to answer the questions in the interview, especially like these on-demand interview questions. So you could go to YouTube and check it out, to see like this link I have here is actually a journalist talking to HireVue about that process, and then the journalist does the on-demand interviews. He only gets 65. He gets a 65 score or something like that. It was under 75. It wasn't very high, but and the guy is a very good communicator, the journalist. So he even got a low score, although HireVue said it was really good. But it's hard, and it's unfortunately going to get harder, and that's why we got to know ourselves. Really pay attention to what you're doing in your jobs. Other AI, parts of the biases, it's supposed to remove biases from that hiring process, from the applicant tracking system, because maybe traditionally in some jobs, let's go with the teacher. There's a huge high percentage of people that are females and teachers, right? We just know that. Whatever reason, for historical purposes or reasons or whatever, it just is what it is right now and has been. So if they put in a job description for a teacher, that traditionally has been a female, will the AI catch on to that somehow and eliminate biases, from that job description or from that hiring process? So we're hoping, I don't know. I mean, who knows what this new administration, because they don't want any guardrails on AI. We're hoping that employers, and there are great employers out there that are ethical, that believe in leveling the playing field and making it fair for everybody, that will work on AI to get rid of any biases that there might be in the hiring process. I believe there are great employers out there that want to make it fair, that want to be inclusive, and are working to make sure that, there is an equal playing field for anybody that has the skill that wants to get into that industry. I believe it. So it is things that you have to think about, right? We're talking about that. It is out there because on the other side of the AI is that person. People have biases. And sometimes we just have to deal with it. And it's always been there before the AI. Chat boxes, right, is a new way, that our new AI invention that employers are using to make it easier for people to apply for jobs. So if you notice, when you're applying for a position, the chat box comes up and says, "Hi, I'm Susie. How can I help you?" And they might ask you some questions and say, "Please download your resume." And then they send it to the recruiter, which 100% of the time is going to say, "Please apply online." So you still have to go through that, applicant tracking system to, set up your profile and all that. But they are understanding that it is difficult and trying to come up with creative ways to, engage with the candidate. Another thing that, we didn't address is, as I had mentioned, how just the workforce in general is changing. The age demographics is changing. This new generation of workers is expecting more from employers. And for these employers to land the talent, they have to move. They have to offer benefits, make that this new generation of workforce individuals are looking for. And they have to make their hiring process easier. The hiring process is a reflection of how things are done with an organization. So if you're applying for a position and you have to go through 5 levels of interviews, that's how they make decisions at that company. And if you're the kind of person that you just want to get things done without all the red tape, know that if you work for that company, it's going to take conversation after conversation after conversation after conversation to get things done. That's the culture. So pay attention to how you're being treated through that interview process, because that's how you're going to be treated as an employee. And employers understand that. They understand that this interview process is a reflection of how things are done. So they want to be a little bit more inclusive, if that's the word you want to use, to draw people in. So these chat boxes and the AI is supposed to make it simpler for people. And so we'll see how that works. But they pay attention to how you're being treated in the interview process. Again, that's a reflection of how things are done and how you'll be treated as an employee. So, kind of in conclusion, practice, practice, practice. That's write everything down. Write, spend time thinking about what you've done in your job. Think about all forms of communication. Who are you sending emails to? Who are you talking to on the phone? Your interactions with other departments. Do I interact with finance? Do I interact with HR? Do I interact with development, or the engineers? What is that relationship? What technology do you use? What problems you have to solve? And be methodical about how I solve this problem. I had this problem. I had to include this person. I had to send out this email. We came to a conclusion as a group. This was the issue. This is the step we're going to take. I mean, everything, write it all down, practice, reflect. And it really does. It builds your self-awareness, your self-confidence. You do more than you think you do. We just get into the day-to-day part of our jobs and forget what skills we're actually utilizing. We just do it. So you have to be, mindful of it. And I can't stress it enough. That's the bigger part of, writing the good resume, giving a good interview. We have no control over applicant tracking systems. We have no control over AI. We have control, obviously, about, how we prepare ourselves. It's hard. I working with a lot of people. I, have tried to uplift people, and but eventually the job will come. As long as you're doing the work, it will, that door will open for you. That right job will be there. It doesn't, unfortunately, in life, doesn't come when we want it or need it. I'm learning that. You know, over and over again in my 50s, but which, by the way, I need to check my lottery ticket.
And
I'm hoping that's my way out.
and I would like to add a note based on just going off what you said, is that what you said was I wrote my resume, and you know how we write our little bullet points. And I think as candidates, we have to step back and say, okay, what if, just hypothetically, what if the interviewer goes, tell me what you did tell me about let's walk through your resume. Tell me about your resume. So I took that approach, like you said, practice, practice, practice. What I did was, just for other candidates to know, is that when you're writing your bullet points, step back and summarize it. And that for each role, try to give a summary of what you did. So that way you're ready to prepare. Not only if they ask you, tell me about your resume, but on the hindsight, you're really reinforcing your knowledge of your past experiences, whether or not
Right,
they ask you to walk me through your resume. So
right.
So I
Yeah,
think that because I think when people say, "Oh, let's talk about your resume," I think they focus too much on the bullet points. When really you shouldn't. You should take your bullet points, step back, and make a summary for each role that you did, and
right.
then you practice, practice, practice of that summary so that
Yeah.
you can nail it. Because whether or not they ask you what you did on your resume, it doesn't matter. You have that now knowledge because you practice, practice, practice. You scripted your way through it. You practice,
Right.
and now you can answer that question with confidence.
Yeah, and you give a
No.
good point because in the interview when they ask you the question, tell me about yourself, that's talking about your resume and summarizing, according to what you think the job function is. When you say, well, at, ABC job, I blah, 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 blah. It's that summary, verifying to them, or acknowledging that you kind of understand what skills they're looking for. I think starting the interview instead of waiting at the end is, before they start, you could say, before we start this interview, can you tell me, what you think are the top three skills somebody needs to be successful in this job? So going into the interview, I need to focus on communication or interpersonal skills or, whatever a technical skill is.
Oh, well, m-
And
well,
you could,
my comment was not about tell me about yourself. My comment was more or less directed on the resume. For
well,
example,
that's what that question is, though. When they say, tell me about yourself, anybody that, teaches these kinds of classes will tell you what they're saying is talk from your resume.
right?
And that's for
Yeah.
you to summarize what you're talking about, what you've
Uh,
done in those jobs.
Well,
Yeah.
actually,
Right. And I
that's not
think, I
exactly what I'm
mean,
trying to say. I think you still should say, "Tell me about yourself." That's another
Yeah.
separate piece. What I'm
Right.
saying is, so tell me about yourself is another separate piece. That's a whole separate piece. But it's not your. But to me, in my perspective, it's
Uh-huh.
not your resume. Tell me about
Yeah.
yourself is just a brief background, but the
Right.
role itself, when you look at your resume, the stuff you write down on your resume for each company role that you worked in, you need to summarize what you did.
Yeah.
Now you're going more in depth. So there's two things. So one of them is you talk about yourself. Tell me about yourself. That's one
Right.
separate piece. Then you go
Right.
into the resume and you look at each role for each company you did and you summarize and make a script and summarize so that way you're ready to talk about each role.
Yeah.
Because talking about yourself is a separate it's a separate comment. You need to talk about yourself. Now you go into your resume. Each role, you should be able to give a summary of what you did for
Yeah.
each role. That way, you're ready to answer those questions, whether or not they ask you, walk me through your resume. So you're ready to
Okay.
answer this question. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you
Okay.
for clarifying. Did somebody else have another comment?
I actually have a question. So from a communication and negotiation strategy standpoint, should you say, when they say, tell me about yourself, do you think you should use brevity and, be very capsulized in terms of your skills? And then should you turn the table around and say, I'd love to know what you would like in terms of a candidate for this job? Because I think the problem is when they offer you an open-ended question, you
Mhm.
can drag it out and give too much information. So what's your thought on that, Anna?
So my thought is, that's a good chance for you to toot your horn. So you don't
Mhm.
want to, you know, not take advantage of that opportunity. So, you know, do that, but then end it with that question that you have, and start the conversation that way.
The, the way I approach to tell me about yourself is that you want to give just a generalization about yourself. That's how can I say a background of yourself, not specifically about the roles you had in the resume, just a background about yourself. I don't know how to explain it, but at the
Well,
end of
Brian,
that,
I would say I understand what you're saying. You never want to give any information that doesn't pertain to the job because that opens up a can of worms because they
right.
might ask more questions. they might be saying, why is this person offering this information?
Right.
So don't talk about hobbies. Don't talk about, what you've done on
Yep.
the weekend. Keep them. It's our job in that interview, even through the resume process, to keep them focused on our skills. I mean, something as simple as having a good resume. I mean, if you're misspelling words, that's a reflection of you. Attention to detail, can the person spell? Are they relying too much on, AI to, tell them that they are using, a word inappropriately. So,
Yeah.
it's our job to keep them focused. So I would say if you're a person that babbles, I'm not saying you specifically, Ryan, but if this said person is somebody that babbles, can't keep on point, it's so easy to kind of dig a grave for yourself.
Well, the way I look at tell me about yourself is tell me about your background. What have you achieved in your progressive professional role or progressive role? Then at the end of tell me about yourself, to the tail end of it, I would add a little verbiage like, what value can you add? What value do you think you can add at the
Yeah.
end? For example, I'm an internal auditor. I'm a standard-driven, self-motivated professional with the aptitude for commercial awareness. So I tell about it, but at the end, I say, as an auditor, I can make sure that we all follow policies. I will work with management to meet their financial and strategic goals. So that's a value-added statement. So
Yeah.
as you're talking about yourself, work the way that you can sell yourself but at the end, what value can you add? Because
Yeah. I mean,
you're
essentially,
really still
that's what
selling
we're
yourself at that
saying.
when you tell me
Yeah.
about yourself.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, the whole conversation is this is the value I add. Yeah.
Yes,
And that's
yes,
what they're looking. That's what they're
yeah.
looking for.
And you want
But
to
to
add that
actually
value added
say
at
it
the end of
is
the tell
good
me about
too.
yourself.
Yeah. Great. Anybody else
So,
have any comments or questions?
I need to close out here and step away, but Anna and Matt, can I email you do you have availability to meet like during the day or obviously your contact information?
Yeah, I'm always available to meet in person, virtually. So there's my contact information. Please
Okay.
feel free to reach out to me.
And same, I can throw my contact information again in the chat. But if you have the chat history, it's one of the first chats as well.
Well, this is a great conversation, everybody. Thank you for showing up today on this yucky day and participating in the conversation. And, we're here to help you. We're a free resource. Matt, our other partners in the community. Um, I DuPage has some really great resources for people that are free. So take advantage of what's out there to support you in your job search.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, thank you. Hope to meet you someday, Ryan.
As well, likewise. Thank you.
Any last minute questions for Anna before we close out? Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing your great insights today.
Oh, thank you.